Hello everyone, I've got a slightly different kind of video for you today. I am building a bittersweet styled Lolita capsule wardrobe. Now, capsule wardrobes are something that I am really into. Like, if you doubt me, check my blog. There's been a lot of them over the years. So naturally, and yes, I am outing myself as someone who goes on CGL here, naturally, when a capsule wardrobe thread is going on CGL, I will generally participate. Now, given that I've been kicking around in Lolita for quite some time, when one of the prompts put forward by one of the anonymous posters was a bittersweet capsule, I'm like, you know what? Yes, I have to do this. And then I thought, why the hell not screen record while I'm doing it, put on a voiceover, and bring you guys along with me so you can see how I put together a digital Lolita capsule. So what you can see I've been doing so far is browsing Lolibrary, which I'm not sure if that's how you meant to pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it, so that's what we're going to go with for this video. Lolibrary, as just a starting point for the capsule. Normally when I'm doing a digital one, I will grab a lot of content and then narrow it down from there. With this particular wardrobe, given that I actually lived through the era of bittersweet Lolita, I had a bit of an advantage in as much as I wasn't just flailing about randomly, I did actually know what I was looking for. For example, you might have seen me earlier on using Google rather than Lolibrary to find the print that was called Sugary Bones by an Australian indie brand, We're All Mad Here. In the end, I didn't end up using any of the main pieces from that series just because I couldn't find good stock images, but I did use the Skelepony bag, which I thought was an excellent addition. But before I ramble too much about bittersweet Lolita, is it a thing? Is it not a thing? Which, by the way, spoiler alert, it totally is its own thing, and I will talk more about that later in the video. I just wanted to tell a little more about my actual process of building one of these digital Lolita capsule wardrobes. Like I said, first port of call is to gather up the guts of the wardrobe. Now by the guts, I mean the main pieces first, and also any key pieces that would define the vibe of the wardrobe. Like you could have seen just then, I was also looking at things like leather jackets, because you can't really go and pick anything else until you have the core of the wardrobe. And in Lolita, unless you style yourself very unusually compared to the vast majority of Lolita fashion participants, your key part is going to be your main piece. As you can see here, once I've got a bunch of them downloaded, I've renamed all my files so they can sort of be clumped together, and I can see what JSKs I've got, what OPs, what skirts, etc. And then I start deleting. So I try and narrow it down to a collection that is both unique and cohesive. Now, I know you might be thinking that those two concepts are literally the opposites of each other, and that's part of why doing a good capsule is tricky, because you want to strike an appropriate balance between pieces that will coordinate with each other, so that you have to have a minimum amount of supplementary pieces, so blouses, boleros, socks, shoes, etc. But you also want them to be somewhat different, because otherwise you're just wearing variations on the exact same thing. So my approach to a capsule is to always try and have, let's call it a thread running through all the main pieces. There is connection, but all the pieces aren't the same. Like, it would have been so much easier to pick every single piece, every single main piece that is, for this capsule wardrobe, make them all black and pink in different prints. That would have made it so much easier to have a smaller capsule and have everything match together really easily. But it would realistically make for a boring wardrobe. It would make for a pretty picture, and if that's all you care about, then go for it. But I actually do care about the realistic wearability of the wardrobes that I create. Once I've got the main pieces sorted, I select supplementary pieces. Now what you're seeing here is, in a sense, my cheat. Because I've put a lot of capsule wardrobes together over time, every time I do it, because I sort of cut the backgrounds out in Photoshop and have them as transparent PNG images just to make things more aesthetic. Oh, and look, there's the Skelepony bag I was telling you about earlier. Anyway, since I save transparent PNGs every time I do this, I actually have a little library of my own. So after I selected the main pieces and, as you saw as well, supplementary outerwear pieces that I thought were pretty distinctive, I referred to my library just so I could pick out any pieces that would suit the wardrobe. naturally, for a distinctive style such as bittersweet, there were also going to be things that I certainly didn't have in my Lolita capsule wardrobes collection, such as the shoes you could see me googling for there. And by the way, aren't those platform boots with the rainbow bits absolutely amazing? Like, pretty please, yes, I want those. Not for Lolita, obviously. Despite some people perhaps not thinking it because I'm doing a bittersweet wardrobe, I do actually have taste. Now what you're seeing me do here is just put together a bit of a list, a shopping list, if you will, of what I think the wardrobe needs from here. Because obviously my little library of PNG images is limited, and I'm always going to need to add to it. So I'm just giving myself a bit of a shopping list, because I do find that with capsules, you do need to actually put thought into it. I mean, obviously, this is a digital collage. It's a pretty picture. It really doesn't matter in the way that if you were building a real life capsule does. And it also has a lot of freedom that a real life capsule would not. I mean, I don't have to care about things fitting. I don't have to care about things being available. I just have to care about them being pretty. However, one limitation some people don't perhaps realize when you see someone doing a capsule in the style that I do. I mean, if you just collaged everything together, it would be different, but because I like to remove the backgrounds and have everything looking aesthetically a certain way, I also have to look for stock images that fulfill certain criteria. They have to be on a mannequin, they have to be facing the front, like the mannequin has to be pointed towards the camera, not at an angle, and they have to be fairly well lit, and preferably, though not a requirement, is that they have a fairly simple background so it's a lot easier for me to remove. I mean, that's not a be-all or end-all, but I prefer it because, trust me, it takes a while to cut everything out. So for the next portion of the video, what you're going to see is more of the same. Me saving things, looking at the wardrobe as it sits as a folder of images on my computer, and tweaking, deleting, finding new things. As you can see, it takes a while. Everything's currently playing for you at 7 times real speed. This whole video is going to be about almost 20 minutes long, and that's not even including all of the cutting out, because trust me, when I get to that portion of the video, I just recorded a little bit and then stopped because I don't want to bore you guys, and there's only so much I can talk about in regards to Bittersweet Lolita. But speaking of that, let's talk about Bittersweet Lolita and its validity as a substyle in the Western Lolita community. Like I say, I've been in Lolita since 2012, I think is when I officially became a Lolita by buying things, but I'd been sort of interested online for a while, and so Bittersweet was at the end of its era. We were sort of getting past that. It was more of a late noughties, early 2010s sort of thing, but you know, it was still around when I was around. So when I'm speaking about Bittersweet Lolita, it is from first-hand experience. It's not from what I've seen other people do. It's, I was there, dudes, I was there. And to be completely fair, even at the time, there was debate amongst Lolitas online whether Bittersweet was its own thing or whether Bittersweet was just sweet prints in black. Now, based on my own experience of seeing other people wear Bittersweet Lolita and the reactions to it online, and also just the general fashion cultures at that time, I am quite certain that Bittersweet Lolita was its own thing. It was not just Sweet Lolita in black. And by the way, just quick segue, I know including a band tee in this wardrobe is, you know, obviously a band tee is not a Lolita item, especially if you haven't customized it or something, but oh my gosh, back in the day, probably bought it in like 2008, I had the best t-shirt, I've still got it, black t-shirt, pink AFI logo. I wish I could have found a usable image for it for this capsule, but I couldn't. But just know that that's what I wanted. I didn't want that My Chemical Romance tee, I wanted the frickin' AFI tee, but what can you do? And yes, I was looking at hats, because, I mean, crucify me for having bad taste, I don't care. I love a hat in Lolita, and again, that is something that really captures that late noughties, early 2010s vibe, which to me is very integral to Bittersweet Lolita. So let's get into that, shall we? We've talked a bit about what Bittersweet isn't, which is sweet prints in black, so let's talk about what it is. As a sort of fairly standard disclaimer, everything I'm about to say is my own opinion. This opinion has been formed by being around at the relevant time period and also investing a fair amount of brain energy into studying and thinking about this fashion, but you know, just my opinion. If you disagree, feel free to pop down a comment, make a reaction video, whatever, I don't care. Well, actually, I even more than don't care. I would actually be keen to have a discourse around this because I find it absolutely fascinating. So, for me, bittersweet Lolita is several things. First of all, it is first and foremost Lolita fashion, so it does follow the majority of the rules. So the knee-length skirt, the petticoat, having your shoulders covered, legwear, headwear, coordination, all of that jazz. It is Lolita. It's not Lolita adjacent, it is Lolita fashion. By the way, a quick segue away from talking about bittersweet, you'll see here I'm putting the final tweaks on the wardrobe. I've found everything I wanted, and now I'm starting the long and arduous process of removing the backgrounds. Because a lot of the items were picked from my wardrobe, I'd already done this, but a lot of them weren't, so for your viewing pleasure here, have a small sample of me removing the backgrounds in Photoshop. Only a small sample, I really didn't want to bore you too much. But anyway, back to bittersweet Lolita. My perspective of bittersweet Lolita is that while it is similar to punk Lolita and similar to creepy cute, which was sort of going around in general at that time in a lot of different fashion styles, bittersweet to me is the Lolita answer to scene and emo in terms of fashion and styling, because it was cute. It was definitely still cute, but it did have an edge. However, that edge was not as rough and ready as traditional punk. I mean, cast your mind back if you were alive back then, and if you weren't, well, oh gosh, people are so young these days. Cast your mind back, because remember, the scene kids, the emo kids, it wasn't tattered, it wasn't rough around the edges in the same way that punk and goth was. It was a cleaner kind of edge, if that makes any sense. And to me, that sensibility is what underpins bittersweet Lolita. It's not about grunge, it's not about goth, it's not even about being creepy. Like, even in this wardrobe, I've included that skeleton bag, but it's not about creepy. It's just about having a little bit of edge. Straight edge, if you will. No, that wasn't very funny, sorry. My sense of humour is entirely based around wordplay and slapstick, but can't really get much of that here. Anyway, before I keep talking about bittersweet as a style, again, I just want to talk a bit about what is happening on the screen. So what you're seeing at the moment is me resizing everything in order to put together the actual collage of the wardrobe. I just try to get each item type sized consistently. So as you can see here, I'm getting all the head bows so that the headbands are about the same size and so on, and with the socks I get it so the little foot portion is the same size regardless of the rest of the sock. That's just a personal preference of how I like to lay these things out, and then once I've got things sized, I move them around, make it actually look aesthetically pleasing, and so on. This section goes on for a little bit, which gives me time to get back to talking about bittersweet as a sub-style of Lolita fashion. And yes, I do think it is a valid sub-style, because we can get to that conclusion by eliminating what it isn't. It isn't just sweet Lolita in black. It isn't a version of punk Lolita. Again, the overall vibes and styling are quite different. There is a cleanness to bittersweet Lolita, and also the focus is different. Bittersweet is cuter, it's adorable, it's like the whole little I'm cute but I'll cut you, basically, personified in a dress, whereas punk is, well, punk is punk. It's not that there isn't some punk edge to bittersweet, it's like how you would argue that the, you know, non-Lolita sub-style equivalents, like actual punk versus, you know, emo, there's definitely a relationship there, but they're cousins, they're not the same person. By the way, I just realized how loud all the lorikeets outside are. I mean, can't really do anything about it except for try and soundproof my entire freaking house, but, you know, forgive the parrots, it's Australia, we're coming to summer, it's gonna happen. But yeah, so bittersweet Lolita in a sense, by process of elimination, has to be its own thing. It is not typical Sweet Lolita. It does consist of items that a typical Sweet Lolita would wear, but it is not just sweet. It is enough of its own thing that it deserves its own subcategory. And ultimately, I'm of the opinion that why shouldn't it be its own thing? I personally think it's a fairly distinctive look that's, yes, it is Sweet Lolita, but it's not Sweet Lolita like you normally see it. And to me, that's enough. Like I said, this whole thing is just my opinion. You're welcome to disagree, I really don't mind, but hey, I'm just putting my money where my mouth is. I've always thought that bittersweet was its own thing, so hey, may as well do a video about it. And speaking of this video, as you can see, I've very nearly finished putting the capsule together. Shortly, I will reveal to you the completed capsule collage, as well as some outfits made using these pieces, and just going to talk a little bit about the actual capsule wardrobe. We're done with talking about bittersweet as a substyle, now we're into just enjoying this bittersweet Lolita capsule wardrobe. Alright, maybe I'm biased because I made it and because I like this style, but I think I did a pretty good job on this one. And now, on to sample outfits. First up is Sugary Carnival, the OP. As you can see, this can be worn in a range of ways, from very traditionally Lolita to much more bittersweet ones. And I love the Skelepony bag with this, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Of course, things like small accessories like a spiky wristband or something like that would make a big difference to how these outfits would actually look when worn. Next up, we have the Cotton Candy Shirring JSK from Angelic Pretty. This one was actually a set and I didn't realize, but whoopsie. Now this piece is a bit of a standout in the wardrobe because of its colour scheme, but that's why it was so important to include it. It does also work with black, as you can see, but it also gives the wardrobe owner options to wear things that aren't just bittersweet, even though the capsule as a whole is bittersweet. Next we have the Candy Treat Colourful Ribbon JSK set. Yeah, I know, again, whoops, I picked a set and forgot that it was a set. Oh well, shoot me. I love Candy Treat in black, honestly, I think it's a really beautiful print. But yeah, again, you've got a lot of variety here, from traditional Lolita to those more bittersweet styled looks. Like I said earlier, accessories and styling do make a big difference. I just don't tend to include those things in digital capsules because it's a pain. Like seriously, have you ever tried photoshopping like a bajillion small accessories? No. So yeah, take that as a bit of a grain of salt. My capsules never come with jewellery or small accessories, and those things would make a big difference to the looks. Anyway, speaking of looks, this is, again, for an Angelic Pretty piece, this is the Present Ribbon JSK, and this colourway is apparently black, not grey, because of course it is Angelic Pretty, of course it is. And then, last of all, outfits with the Candy Pop skirt, also from Angelic Pretty. Like, Angelic Pretty's kind of the bomb if you want to do bittersweet. But this is the last bunch of outfits, and as you can see, even pieces that don't match the wardrobe as a whole so well, like the Angelic Pretty Catty is, are actually really useful for adding variety to the outfits. One day I'll talk more about building capsules in general, because it, like I said at the start, it really is a passion of mine. But for now, I really hope you enjoyed seeing this bittersweet capsule and hearing me ramble about bittersweet Lolita. And until next time, bye bye!